At my birthday party, I planned to announce my pregnancy, but instead my boyfriend handed me a box with a note inside that read, "I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better." Everyone laughed when he left. Our friends looked at me. I had been with Justin for a little over 3 years. He was charming, attentive, the kind of guy who actually maintained eye contact instead of constantly scanning the room for someone more interesting. Things escalated quickly between us, and by the time we hit our 1-year anniversary, we were already living together in a cozy little place that stretched our budget to the limit. Not exactly ideal timing financially, but in this city, rent is outrageous no matter when you decide to move. Our relationship wasn't flawless, but it felt stable. We shared similar aspirations, eventually buying a house, traveling a bit, and maybe at some point starting a family. Justin, however, always put more emphasis on appearances than I did. He cared about the kind of car we drove, which restaurants we were seen at, and making sure our Instagram posts looked effortlessly perfect. I should have paid closer attention to that red flag, but hindsight is always crystal clear, isn't it? Anyway, about 4 months ago, I started feeling off. Mornings made me nauseous, and I was constantly exhausted. I decided to take a pregnancy test, mostly just to rule it out. We had been careful enough, but as soon as I saw those 2 pink lines, my entire world shifted. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at that little plastic stick like it was some kind of ancient artifact I needed to decipher. I kept the news to myself for about a week, tried to process what this meant for me, for us. The first person I told was my best friend, Barbara. She showed up to our usual girls' night with a bottle of wine, and the moment I stuck to water, she caught on. She asked all the right questions. What did I want? How did I think Justin would react? What about insurance, maternity leave, all the practical stuff? That conversation helped me sort through the chaos in my head. As for Justin, I decided to hold off. My birthday was 3 weeks away, and I figured it would be the perfect moment to share the news. We had already planned a small gathering at our apartment with our closest friends, and I imagined how special it would be to announce it's surrounded by the people I loved. Again, hindsight, what a cruel little thing. The weeks leading up to my birthday felt strange. The so-called morning sickness, more like all-day sickness, by the way, was making life miserable, and I was doing my best to keep it hidden from Justin. He didn't notice. I chalked it up to him being preoccupied. He had been coming home later than usual, glued to his phone more often, and generally feeling distant. I assumed it was work stress. Then, finally, my birthday arrived, a Saturday. I spent the morning setting everything up while Justin went out to pick up the cake, which somehow took him almost 3 hours. Annoying, but whatever. By 6 p.m., our friends started showing up. Barbara and her husband, our friends Aaron and Sergio, my cousin Lana, who was visiting, and a few others, including Maria, a friend from college. The party was going well, great food, plenty of drinks, laughter, music. I had my sparkling water disguised as a vodka soda, and every so often, I'd catch Barbara's eye from across the room. She'd give me these subtle little nods of encouragement, making my stomach flip with anticipation. By 9 p.m., everything seemed to be lining up perfectly for the big announcement. Justin clinked his glass, and the room fell silent. My heart nearly stopped. Had he somehow found out? Was he about to steal my thunder? He started talking, making this whole speech about how special I was, how lucky he felt to have me in his life. His eyes stayed locked on mine the entire time, and for a split second, I actually believed him. Then, he reached into his pocket and handed me a small, beautifully wrapped box with a delicate silk ribbon. The energy in the room shifted, people whispered, phones came out, cameras poised to capture what everyone assumed would be a major, life-changing moment. I remember thinking, is this an engagement ring? A sudden wave of panic hit me. If he proposed, should I still announce the pregnancy tonight? How would that even work? But as I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid, I realized it wasn't a ring at all. Inside was a single folded piece of paper. Confused, I pulled it out, unfolded it, and read the words now seared into my memory forever. I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better. Your stuff will be packed by Monday. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My brain refused to process what I was looking at. Then, slowly, I lifted my head, expecting this to be some kind of sick joke. But Justin's face had changed completely. Gone was the warm, doting boyfriend from moments ago. Instead, he looked cold, detached, amused. Then, in a loud, clear voice meant for everyone to hear, he said, "We're done. It's been fun, but I've outgrown you." And then, he laughed. Actually laughed. At first, a few people chuckled along, assuming this was some kind of elaborate prank. But then Justin turned without another word and walked straight out the front door. No hesitation, no second glance. Just gone. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood there, still holding that crumpled note, the pregnancy announcement dying in my throat, while everyone else stared between me and the door, waiting for the moment when someone, anyone, would yell, "Just kidding." Nobody did. Barbara was the first to move. She crossed the room, took the note from my shaking hands, read it, and muttered, "What an absolute bastard." That seemed to break the spell. Suddenly, everyone was talking at once. Voices overlapping with shock, concern, outrage. Someone asked if I was okay. Someone else cursed under their breath. Another person wondered aloud if they should go after Justin. And me? I smiled. Not because I wasn't devastated. I was. Not because I wasn't humiliated. I absolutely was. But because, in that exact moment, I realized something crucial. Justin had no idea what was coming. He thought he held all the cards. He thought he'd pulled off the perfect exit. This dramatic, public execution of our relationship where he got to be the powerful one, walking away while I crumbled. But he didn't know I was pregnant with his child. He didn't know I had found his secret credit card statements 2 weeks earlier while searching for a stamp in his desk drawer. He didn't know I had already seen the text on his Apple Watch while he was in the shower. Seriously, he really should have set up two-factor authentication, LEL. And most importantly, he didn't know that I'm not the kind of woman who falls apart when she's pushed. I'm the kind who gets strategic. So I smiled. I thanked everyone for coming. I assured them I was fine. I wasn't. I told them they didn't need to worry about me. They did. Then I cut the birthday cake Barbara had brought and handed out slices, as if I were celebrating the end of something rather than mourning it. Maria left almost immediately, mumbling something about feeling sick. Interesting timing, right? Don't worry. We'll get to her. The others stayed, helping me clean up, offering places to crash, shoulders to cry on, and, half-jokingly, alibis for murder. Mostly joking. By midnight, the apartment was empty except for Barbara, who refused to leave despite my protests. She made up her mind that she was sleeping on my couch, and honestly, I was too exhausted to argue. And that's when I finally broke. The pregnancy, the betrayal, the sheer, gut-wrenching humiliation of it all. It came crashing down at once, knocking the breath from my lungs. Barbara just held me as I sobbed. Deep, body-shaking, soul-emptying sobs. She didn't try to fix it, didn't offer any of those empty reassurances people love to throw around when they don't know what else to say. No, everything happens for a reason. No, you'll find someone better. Just quiet understanding. By the time I finally calmed down, somewhere around 2 a.m., I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I hesitated before answering the call. The number was unfamiliar, and after the whirlwind weekend I'd had, I wasn't in the mood for surprises. But curiosity got the better of me. Hello? For a moment, there was only silence. Then a shaky breath. Lily? I knew that voice. Even after everything, I recognized it instantly. Maria. My grip tightened around the phone, my pulse picking up. Of all the people I expected to hear from, she was at the very bottom of the list. What do you want? I asked, my voice sharp. Another pause. I could hear her exhale like she was gathering herself. Can we talk? I let out a short, humorless laugh. Talk. Now. After she snuck out of my party like a coward? After she watched Justin humiliate me in front of everyone and said nothing? After I found out she was the one he'd been sneaking around with? I almost hung up. Almost told her to go to hell and blocked her number. But something made me stop. Maria wasn't the type to reach out unless she had a reason. I wanted to know exactly what that reason was. Fine, I said, my tone clipped. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th. 30 minutes. I hung up before she could respond. Barbara, who had been watching me from the couch, set down her coffee. That Maria? Yep. She raised an eyebrow. You gonna punch her? I snorted, grabbing my coat. Tempting. But no. Barbara leaned back, crossing her arms. Want to come with? Be your backup? I appreciated the offer, but I shook my head. I need to handle this myself. She didn't argue, just nodded and said, text me if you need bail money. I smirked. Noted. Then I walked out the door, my mind racing. Maria reaching out now meant something. And I was going to find out exactly what. I shook my head. A clean break? I repeated, my voice flat. You think humiliating me in front of all our friends, sneaking around with Maria, and leaving me with all the financial mess you created counts as a clean break? Justin sighed, rubbing his face like he was the one exhausted by all this. Lily, I didn't plan for it to happen this way. I cut him off with a sharp laugh. No. So tell me, how exactly did you plan to leave your pregnant girlfriend? His mouth snapped shut. His entire body stiffened. There it was. The moment I'd been waiting for. I wasn't naive enough to think he'd feel real remorse, but the look of pure shock on his face, that was satisfying. He blinked a few times, like he was waiting for me to take it back, to say he misheard me. Pregnant, he finally muttered. You're pregnant? 10 weeks. I watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. And you, why didn't you tell me? His voice was softer now, less defensive. Why would I? I shot back. So you could drop another cruel note in a gift bag? Or maybe announce it at another party for maximum effect. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. I let out a slow breath, keeping my expression unreadable. Justin, I don't owe you anything. You made that very clear when you walked out on me. I've had to pick up the pieces of the life you shattered. And trust me, figuring out how to raise a baby while dealing with your betrayal has not been a fun addition to my to-do list. His hand raked through his already messy hair. He looked lost, like he had no idea what to say next. Good. Let him sit in that discomfort. I could feel the shift happening, where the power had once been in his hands, now was in mine. So what now? He finally asked. I tilted my head. Now I go on with my life. And you? Well, you made your choice. You don't get to come crawling back just because things didn't work out how you thought they would. His face darkened. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, you look a little lost, Justin. Maria not what you expected? His lips pressed into a thin line. That was all the confirmation I needed. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. Here's how this is going to go. You'll get the rest of your things when I say so. You will not show up unannounced. You will not contact me unless it's necessary. And as for this baby, you'll find out more when I decide you should. His nostrils flared. That's not fair, Lily. I have a right to know. Like I had a right to know you were cheating on me? I shot back. He fell silent. I stood up, smoothing my coat. Good talk, Justin. I'll let you know when I'm ready to discuss anything further. And with that, I walked out, leaving him sitting there, looking as lost as he deserved to be. With a small smile, the kind that held no sympathy, just quiet understanding. That sounds like a you problem, I said, then walked away, leaving her standing there in the vitamin aisle looking like she'd swallowed something bitter. I won't lie. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, not because she was miserable, but because the universe was doing its thing, balancing the scales. Justin had thrown me aside for a fantasy, and now reality was sinking its claws into him. That was his mess to clean up. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing with a message from Barbara. Sergio just told me Maria moved out. Apparently, Justin's charm wore off real fast when the money ran out. I sat down on my couch, in my apartment, in my space that no longer held his things, and let that sink in. Maria had left him. Whatever dreams she'd had of some glamorous new life must have crumbled under the weight of unpaid bills and broken promises. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I put my phone down, stretched out, and felt something shift inside me. Not just the baby, though at 14 weeks now, I could feel tiny flutters sometimes, but something deeper. Peace. I was done looking back. I stared at the message for a long moment before setting my phone down without responding. Promises were easy. I'd heard plenty from Justin before, each one emptier than the last. Morning came too soon. I got up, dressed in something comfortable but presentable, and made my way to the cafe. A part of me wasn't sure he'd actually show, but at exactly 9:58 a.m., Justin walked in. He looked rough. Not just tired, but drained, like life had wrung him out. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, dark circles shadowed his eyes. He scanned the room, spotted me, and approached hesitantly. "Lily," he said, pulling out the chair across from me. "Justin." I kept my voice neutral. For a moment, he just sat there, rubbing his hands together, avoiding my gaze. Then he exhaled sharply. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with why you're here," I said. "Because if this is about fixing things between us, don't waste your breath." He flinched but nodded. "I know. I do. I messed up. And now I don't know how to make things right." I crossed my arms. "You don't. You live with your choices, like the rest of us." His jaw tensed. "I want to be involved with the baby." I had expected that, but hearing it still sent a strange mix of emotions through me. Define involved. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I want to figure it out. I need to." I studied him. He looked sincere, probably was, at least in this moment. But sincerity didn't erase the past. It didn't make him suddenly reliable. "I'm not making any decisions today," I said. "This isn't just about what you want. It's about what's best for the baby. And right now, I don't trust you." He swallowed hard. "How do I fix that?" "That's something you'll have to figure out on your own." We sat there for a while, the silence stretching. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said, almost to himself. "Okay." As I left the cafe, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not sad, not heartbroken, just done. And that, more than anything, told me I was going to be just fine. Overwhelming. She'd always been supportive, but this felt different, more urgent, like she was trying to make up for something unspoken. I try not to read too much into it, but late at night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something I didn't. Maybe just the weight of experience, maybe a mother's instinct. Either way, I accepted the help and kept moving forward. Justin, to his credit, didn't immediately vanish. He followed through on meeting with a lawyer. At least, that's what he claimed. But when it came to actually signing anything, he was suddenly taking his time to process everything. Classic Justin. He was showing up for our scheduled check-ins, but there was this forced, performative energy to it, like he was trying to convince me, or himself, that he was the kind of man who took responsibility. Always just a little too rehearsed, a little too self-aware. He was careful with his words, acting like some overcorrected version of himself. But I wasn't impressed. I wasn't looking for grand gestures or apologies anymore. I was looking for consistency. And so far, that was something he still struggled with. Then, about a month after our cafe meeting, I got a message that made my stomach drop. "Maria, we need to talk." I just stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. 100 different responses ran through my head, most of them sarcastic or dismissive, but I settled on something simple. "Me about what?" The reply came fast. "Maria, can you talk now?" I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won out. A second later, my phone started ringing. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was tight, like she was trying too hard to sound casual. "Are you really pregnant?" Straight to the point. No small talk, no fake niceties. I exhaled slowly. "Yeah." Silence. Then, "And it's Justin's?" I almost laughed at the stupidity of the question. Instead, I just said yes. There was a long pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to rearrange the story she'd been telling herself. Then she let out this bitter little laugh. "God, I am so stupid. I didn't say anything." She inhaled sharply. "He told me you were lying, that you made the whole thing up to get back at him, that you were obsessed, trying to ruin his life, that you—" She cut herself off. Jesus, I was so blind. I felt something twist in my chest, something sharp and ugly, but I kept my voice steady. "And you believed him?" Another pause. Then, quietly, I wanted to. There it was. The truth in 4 little words. I didn't let myself feel anything about it. Not anger, not pity. Just a quiet confirmation that I'd never really been dealing with a person who saw me as human. Just an obstacle, an inconvenience. "Well," I said, "now you know." She exhaled shakily. "Yeah." A weird silence stretched between us. And then, hesitantly, "Are you okay?" That caught me off guard. "Why do you care?" I asked, not unkindly. She sighed. "I don't know. Maybe because I should have a long time ago." That almost made me laugh. Bit late for that. I know, she murmured. But she hesitated. Look, I don't expect you to believe me, but he's been different lately. Cagey, defensive, and broke. Really broke. I figured something was going on, but I didn't think. She stopped herself. Anyway, I just wanted to hear it from you. Now you have. Another long silence. Be careful, Lily. A cold shiver ran down my spine. What do you mean? I mean, she said quietly, I don't think you've seen the worst of him yet. And then she hung up. Uncomfortable. I've always been independent, you know? Meanwhile, Justin was processing. He'd text occasionally, asking about the baby or requesting pictures of the nursery's progress. I'd respond factually, but keep emotional distance. Sometimes he'd try to veer into personal territory, asking if I was seeing anyone. Nope. Or mentioning some show we used to watch together. I gently redirected. Then came the incident. Yes, it deserves capital letters. I was at Target on a Saturday afternoon, loading up on diapers. You can never have too many, according to every mom blog ever, when I literally bumped carts with Maria. Again, what are the odds? This time was different, though. She wasn't awkward or defensive. She actually seemed relieved to see me. She immediately asked how I was feeling, how the pregnancy was going, all while looking genuinely interested. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. She apologized. Not a rushed, uncomfortable sorry, not sorry, but a real, thoughtful apology, acknowledging the pain she'd caused. She explained that Justin had sold her the same story he'd apparently fed multiple women, that we were basically over, just going through the motions, and that I was holding him back from his true potential. She found out he'd been seeing another woman while dating her. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. We ended up getting coffee, tea for me, and having this surreal conversation about the man we both now saw clearly for who he was. Not a monster, just a deeply insecure person who needed constant validation and was willing to lie to get it. As we were saying goodbye, Maria casually mentioned that Justin had been let go from his job 2 weeks earlier. She thought I should know, since it might affect child support. I thanked her for the info and headed home, processing this new development. I wasn't happy about Justin's job loss. It complicated things, but I appreciated knowing. That evening, as I was folding tiny onesies and listening to my favorite podcast, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Always check the peephole, folks, and saw Justin standing there. Sober this time, but looking rough. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. He started talking immediately, asking if I'd heard about his job, saying it wasn't his fault that he was being set up. Then he asked if I'd seen Maria recently, sounding suspicious. I told him yes, we'd run into each other at Target. His face did this weird thing where it tried to look casual, but just looked constipated instead. He asked what we talked about, and I simply said, you. Mostly. He did not like that answer. LOL. Then he started getting agitated, saying we were probably conspiring against him, that everyone was turning on him when he was just trying his best in a difficult situation. I reminded him that he created this situation with the choices he made, and that playing the victim wasn't going to work with me. That's when he broke down. Not dramatically, no movie-style tears. He just crumpled, said his life was falling apart. No job, no girlfriend, an apartment he could barely afford, and a baby on the way that he wasn't prepared for. For a brief moment, I felt that old urge to comfort him, to fix things. But then I remembered the cold words in that birthday note. You're useless. I deserve better. Instead of comfort, I offered clarity. I told him he had 2 paths forward. Continue the pity party and lose everything, or step up, take responsibility, and rebuild. For the first time since this whole mess started, Justin really listened. No interruptions. No excuses. Just listening. When I finished, he nodded slowly and asked if we could talk inside. I hesitated, then agreed, but left the door open. Never fully close yourself in with someone unstable. We sat at my kitchen table, and he asked thoughtful questions about the baby for the first time. Not surface-level stuff, but real questions about health, development, and plans for delivery. As we talked, I realized something important. I no longer felt anything romantic for Justin, but I did want him to be okay. Not for his sake, but for our child's. Before he left, he promised to review the child support agreement and find a new job ASAP. He also, surprisingly, thanked me for not hating him when I had every right to. I told him hate takes too much energy, and I was saving my energy for more important things. The next few weeks brought subtle changes. Justin found a new job, paying less but steadier. He signed a child support agreement without argument. He even enrolled in a parenting class at the community center. As my due date approached, things felt not perfect, but functional. Justin and I had established a cautious co-parenting relationship built on clear boundaries and expectations. He came to doctor appointments when invited. He helped assemble the crib when I finally admitted defeat with those ridiculous IKEA instructions last week at 7 months. It wasn't ideal, but it was a start at a few months ago without raising the rent, which was a relief. I also started a small freelance business doing writing and content creation for local brands. It's not glamorous, but it's a start, and I'm proud of how far I've come on my own. Looking back on everything that's happened, it's hard to believe how much has changed. I was once a woman reeling from betrayal and trying to figure out how to move on. Now, I'm a mother navigating life with a newborn, co-parenting with someone I never thought I'd have any relationship with again. The resentment I once held for Justin is mostly gone, replaced by a strange form of understanding. He's still flawed, still working through his own issues, but he's trying in a way I didn't think he was capable of. That's something. As for me, I'm not the same person I was before all this. I've grown in ways I never expected. I've learned to depend on myself, to trust my instincts, and to accept that life doesn't always turn out the way you plan. But that doesn't mean it can't still be good. It's been a rocky road, but somehow I've made it here. And with little Zoe in my arms, I'm starting to see that maybe this journey, as messy and complicated as it's been, is exactly the one I was meant to take. I'll leave it here for now, Reddit fam. Maybe in the future, I'll have more updates to share, more stories of how things are evolving. But for now, I'm focusing on what matters most, my daughter, my growth, and the future I'm building for us. Thanks for all your support. You've helped me get through some of the darkest times, and I'll never forget it. Until next time, came by to see Zoe. He mentioned something about me moving on, and it caught me off guard. I wasn't sure if he meant it as an accusation or just a casual observation, but it made me realize how much he still sees me as something he has ownership over. I could feel that old frustration bubbling up, but I kept my cool. I just told him that things were different now, and I wasn't looking back. It's strange how people evolve, or at least try to. I've changed so much since the old days with Justin. I used to be tangled up in his chaos, trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. But now, I'm learning to live without that constant emotional drain. I'm finding my balance again, without needing his approval or validation. The more I focus on Zoe and what she needs, the more I realize how much space I've been taking back for myself. Eli and I've gotten closer, but not in the way I would have expected. There's no rush to define things, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I've learned that rushing into relationships doesn't guarantee anything, and right now, I'm focusing on me and Zoe. Eli is a nice distraction, though, in the best way. We share a lot of laughs, and it's refreshing to talk to someone who isn't caught up in the drama of my past. As for Justin, he still reaches out occasionally. Sometimes it's about Zoe, sometimes it's just to talk about his job or complain about his new place. I don't mind the communication. It's not like it used to be, when every word felt loaded with tension. It's just normal now. Not perfect, but manageable. That's the theme of my life these days. Nothing's perfect, but I'm managing. And that's enough. I'm starting to see that the most important thing is my daughter's happiness and the peace I've found in my own life. There's no room for old ghosts anymore. Justin's journey is his own, and I'll never stop hoping he figures it out, but I'm done being a part of it in the way I used to be. The future feels open now, and that's a relief. It's funny. Sometimes it takes everything falling apart to see the possibility of something better waiting for you. I'm not sure what comes next, but I'm not as afraid of it anymore. One step at a time, I'll keep moving forward. Eli had just left when Justin showed up for his visit, and the look on his face when he saw him was complicated. It wasn't obvious, but I could tell. Later, he casually asked who that guy was. I kept it vague, partly because there's not much to tell yet, and partly because it's none of his business. He made a few comments about me moving on too fast before seeming to catch himself, quickly backing off. Barbara thinks I should go for it with Eli, but I'm taking things day by day. After everything that's happened, I've learned that rushing into anything never ends well. Besides, Zoe is my priority right now. Dating as a single mom is a whole different ballgame, and I'm still figuring out the rules. Speaking of Barbara, she's been my constant throughout all of this. When I'm overwhelmed and convinced I'm failing at motherhood, she brings over iced coffee, my first love, back in my life now that breastfeeding is going better, and reminds me that all new parents feel this way. She takes Zoe for a few hours sometimes so I can shower, nap, or just sit in silence. Bless silence. Yesterday was actually my birthday, 1 year since the box that changed everything. Instead of dwelling on that memory, I had a small gathering at my place. Barbara and her husband Aaron, Sergio, my cousin Lana, and a few other close friends. Justin stopped by briefly to drop off a gift, a surprisingly thoughtful bracelet with Zoe's birthstone, but didn't stay. As I looked around at my little apartment, filled with people who truly care about me, and my daughter sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, at the life I've built from the ashes of what I thought I wanted, I felt something I hadn't expected: gratitude. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Eli will become something meaningful, or maybe he'll just be a brief chapter in this story. Maybe Justin will continue growing into a decent co-parent, or maybe he'll revert to old patterns. Maybe I'll stay in this apartment forever, or maybe I'll eventually find a house with a yard for Zoe to play in. What I do know is that I'm not the same woman who stood holding that note on her birthday last year. That woman was shattered but determined. This woman is rebuilt, stronger at the broken places. So, I guess if there's any moral to this long, messy story, it's that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best version of yourself. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. P.S. If you're wondering what happened to that giant teddy bear Justin brought to the hospital, it's currently serving as a barricade to keep Zoe from rolling off my bed when I need to put her down for 2 seconds to pee. So, I guess it found its purpose after all. For those asking what happened to the infamous breakup note, I kept it. It's in a memory box in Zoe's closet, along with her hospital bracelet, first lock of hair, and a positive pregnancy test. Someday, when she's old enough, we'll tell her the whole story. Not to burden her, but because it's part of her history too.